Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
County Mayor Lee Harris on the sales tax, MATA, tax incentives, and much more tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian. Thanks for joining us. I am joined tonight by County Mayor Lee Harris. Thanks for being here again.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
Along with Bill Dries, reporter with the Daily Memphian. We have a lot to talk about. Obviously, I listed many things at the top of the show, and we'll try to get to all of them. I think I would like to start. There's a lot of things we could start with. MATA's big issue right now and the funding, and we will spend a lot of time on that. But I think I want to start with, just because we've had a series of shows about the outcome of the debate about the sales tax referendum and then the outcome of that. What is your take in terms of that tax referendum being passed? Should the county come in and take 50% of it? Let's start there.
So I don't think the county should come in and take 50% of the sales tax revenue. I think that would undermine the will of the voters. The voters, I think, expressed their will pretty decisively on Election Day that they'd love to see more investment in public safety. I think it was very clear what that referendum was about. It was about whether or not there should be more investment in public safety. And so I think it would frustrate that kind of popular will for us to do something other than what the voters have commanded. If you're going to do a referendum, right, and we did one, you kind of follow the will of the voters. So I think that it should go towards investments in public safety. I'll leave it to the city to decide when and how to do that. I do think there are plenty of details that will have to be worked out on their side of Civic Plaza, but I do think that the public wants to see an investment in public safety.
I mean, technically, if it goes to the city, it doesn't really involve the county how that's spent. But will you have any input in any fashion on how they do that, or you're just going to watch like the rest of us?
I'm hopeful that we just watch, because what the public said through the referendum, as I understand it, is they wanted to see the city of Memphis make a significant investment in public safety. Remember, again, I'm not over there on that side right now.
No,
but I think, but this is certainly the number one issue in our community is crime and public safety. We all know that we have suffered some morale issues with respect to our first responders, our law enforcement, and that one of the reasons why there has been morale and attrition is related to investments in public safety. I think we all remember the pension cuts and the health benefit cuts. I was around at that time.
Were you on the city council?
I was on city council at that time.
Did you vote for those cuts?
I voted against the cuts, and I voted against the cuts primarily because I thought it would undermine law enforcement morale, and we would see a lot of law enforcement leave. And that was the number one issue in our community, even at that time, was public safety. And I could not countenance a cut like that could put us in peril with respect to recruiting first responders.
Last thing, and then I'll go to Bill. Again, that debate back in 2012, the vote that was taken in 2014, and the conversation now is in part about fiscal responsibility and what increasing those benefits back to those levels, what those would do to the city budget over time. Do you worry about that? Again, you don't have a say in this as county mayor, but I think you're a resident of Memphis. You've been involved in politics in lots of different ways. Do you worry about the long-term effect?
So now we're going back to my city council days, and my opinion as to the details is, yes, I'm worried about our long-term financial outlook. But I believe there is a way to do it and still manage that long-term financial outlook. So, for example, in other organizations that have abandoned traditional guaranteed benefit programs, the pension programs and so forth, in those organizations, they've primarily done it with respect to their new hires. And so back in the day, I was of the opinion that if we were going to make this kind of change, you could not make it with respect to the people that are currently part of your organization and that have built up reliance on promises that were made as they entered the organization, that you could only make a change with respect to new hires before they enter the organization. I thought that was the most prudent approach to have this discussion. But what ended up happening, of course, is that some folks who were who had already signed up to become cops or become firemen saw their benefits cut. And I thought that was not in keeping with our original pledges to those law enforcement personnel. And I thought that was very different from how it works out in organizations across our country.
Okay. Bill.
If the county commission were to a majority on the county commission were to disagree with you and pass a referendum ordinance to put this to, I believe it would be voters in unincorporated Shelby County. As mayor, would you veto
Yes.
that? You would?
Yes, because again, I've always said that vetoes are reserved for instances when the popular will is clear and you have a situation where government does something that is completely against the popular will.
All right. Let's shift now to the sustainability fee, what some folks have called the third car fee. Commission Chairman Mark Billingsley has said that he doesn't see this happening. What's been your read? Because you've made a commitment to, in effect, campaign for this idea over the next 5 months until a vote in February sometime.
And let me back up, just for those who aren't necessarily as familiar, this $145 is meant to raise some $10 million to go towards MATA, an investment in transit. Go ahead.
So the idea is to make a major investment in MATA to the tune of $10 million. MATA, of course, can grow ridership, and we can enter into that stage of development where we have our buses on the streets and more reliable, traveling more frequently. What has happened is over time we've seen traffic congestion issues, we've seen wear and tear on our roads, we've seen a degradation of our shared environment. The American Lung Association in 2019 gave us an F on some indicators. One of the highest conditions in the emergency room at Le Bonheur Methodist is asthma. A lot of those issues with our shared environment flow from passenger vehicles, and a lot of the solution is transit. And so I've said, let's try as best we can to marry the problem and the solution. If the problem is wear and tear on our roads, emissions and the degradation of our shared environment, and traffic congestion, which will only worsen over time, and the solution is transit, let's see if we can figure out a way to create a fee on those passenger vehicles in some limited cases that creates a revenue source for transit. The fee that we talked about only would apply to 17% of households. 83% of people would face no new fee and no new taxes. Meanwhile, 100% of us would get the benefit of the reduced traffic congestion, the improved environment, and better infrastructure in this community. So that was one of the things that's happening. The other thing that's happening is at some point, somebody's got to open up a conversation around transit. And so I am open to any number of ideas around how to invest in transit, but transit is a very important and top priority. There are a bunch of reasons. I've talked about one, the environment, but there's also economic benefits to transit, significant economic benefits to transit, and equity benefits when it comes to transit. So
Have you heard any alternative ideas in the brief time?
I have heard, just idle talk. Yes, I've heard idle talk. Have I heard any specific plan that could serve as an alternative to the plan we put forward? Not yet, but I am hopeful. Right now, what we are doing as best we can over the next 6 months, and I know this is a heavy lift because it is transit, and transit is one of those issues that doesn't affect everyone right now. Right? Only 2% of our population took a bus today. 98% of our population did not. So 98% of people are, kind of wondering, what about me? So we've got to make the case, and I've said we're going to make the case over the next 6 months to talk about, number one, how the money will be spent. It's basically to fund more frequency with respect to 8 routes in the urban core, and also to make the case that transit is an important thing. I've talked about one reason why it's important, the environmental benefits. The fact that if we invest $10 million in transit, we'll get 1 million new rides, which means that we will take thousands of cars off of the streets and remove thousands of tons of greenhouse gas emissions from our environment. There are also equity reasons, and this is where I tailed off a moment ago. The equity reason is our poverty rate is climbing in this community. So we have a lot of bright spots, and there is certainly momentum and optimism out there. There's no doubt about that. But inequality is growing and poverty is growing. So of 950,000 people, 200,000 live in poverty. That's one of the largest poverty populations in our state and in the country. And the numbers are going up. There are now 28,000 people that live in poverty this year that were not in poverty last year. One of the ways we get people to finally climb up out of poverty is access to jobs. And one of the ways they get access to jobs is transportation.
The $10 million, backing up a little bit, the $10 million let's break that down a little bit more. On 8 routes, is that what you said?
Yes.
Be focused on that and increasing those frequency by a few a day or something like that, that would then translate into the 1 million more rides a year. Is that correct?
So there are 44 routes on MATA. Some of those routes do not come very frequently, so it wouldn't be unusual to wait an hour or more for a bus.
Right.
If you wait an hour or more for a bus, then you can't use that route reliably to get to work. So we want to improve the frequency on some of those successful routes so that people can use MATA in order to get to work, get around town, and get back home to have dinner with their families.
This week, or sometime this week, $12 million was announced from federal money for bus rapid transit. Is that right? Does that mitigate the problem at all? Does that replace this $10 million you're trying to raise, or no?
$10 million in the scheme of things is not enough to get where we need to go. Okay. But the $10 million plan is the start of a conversation.
So that'd be on top of, if this $12 million I think is happening, right? And it's focused on 8 miles linking downtown Medical District, Overton Square, the library in U of M, 28 transit stations, 7 new buses, and kind of high-tech electric buses. So this would be on top of that.
Exactly.
And didn't you, when you campaigned, you talked about a $25 million investment, or $30 million. I can't remember what the number was.
That was the MATA number.
That was the MATA number, excuse me. Okay, so you didn't. So if we're fighting about 10 million, how in the world, if it's as important as you say it is, I'm not saying it is, but how then do we get to the 20 or 30 million that MATA talks about it needing?
1 inch at a time. Yeah. That's how we get there. Remember that the transit plan talked about in Nashville is more than $5 billion. So that's where Nashville is. They're talking about more than $5 billion.
The one that was shot down by the state, right?
Devoted to transit.
Yes.
I think they may have had a referendum, but more than $5 billion supported by the National Chamber of Commerce, all the stakeholder groups, $5 billion, right? $5 billion. Our transit plan is $10 million, which is less than 1% of the national plan. So the point is, we have a long way to go. Recall, we're in our 200th anniversary. 200 years ago, this community was out front, outpacing Atlanta, outpacing every community you can think of, Dallas and Charlotte. 10 years ago, we could have claimed to be competitive with Nashville. None of those things are true right now. And the only way we can kind of enter into this conversation is to have a transit system that work. That's one of the major ways you can recruit young folks to your town. And so right now, the county, by the way, is shrinking, right? It's shrinking. Nashville is growing at 100 people a day. That's about 35,000 people a year that move to Nashville. Meanwhile, Shelby County, over the last few years, is actually contracting. So if we're going to have growth, we're going to have to make investments. And one of the things that could lead to more growth in our community is having reliable public transit.
Johnny Mosley, who wrote an op-ed for us, he's the founder of Citizens for Better Service. He's concerned that third car fee would hit too many poor households, that households in Fraser and households in Westwood, that there'd be too many people, that it would be it wouldn't help because of its impact there. Do you worry about that, or do you feel like this fee would hit the people who can most afford it?
I'm open to any idea that is out there to fund transit because it has such significant implications for our community. The environmental implications, the equity implications, and the economic implications. For years and years in our community, we've had thousands and thousands of open jobs. If you go to jobsfortn.com, which is our state website, you'll see at least 16,000 open jobs in this community right now. The vast majority of those jobs you will see designated as requiring no skills whatsoever. And the reason why those jobs are open, right? If you ask people who are unemployed in our county, why don't you take one of these open, unfilled jobs? Most of them will tell you it is because of transportation, that they don't have any way to get to those jobs. So for years, we've been talking about the open jobs. This is one of the ways you help solve and connect employers and potential employees.
You talked about younger folks being more willing to use public transportation, to use the bus system. What do you think the state of the Memphis Area Transit Authority's credibility is with Memphians in general?
Well, with Memphians in general, I think they've got a lot of work to do to improve their brand. So there's no doubt about that. But one of the reasons why their brand has suffered is because there have been buses that don't travel frequently. There have been significant delays, and it takes a long time for people to move around our community on a bus. So the start of trying to turn that around is a conversation like this about how we make an investment in transit.
Is the $12 million in federal funding that's coming in for the downtown to the University of Memphis corridor, so to speak, is that a test of it? I mean, are people going to be watching, do you think, to see if MATA pulls that off?
Well, I think people are watching transit right now, and I think that's a great thing. So that's why I ran for office, right? I ran for office because I wanted to make sure that we had debates in this community around things that matter to everyday citizens. So that's issues like livable wages, that's issues like transit, that's issues like criminal justice reform. So I do think around our community right now, everybody's talking about transit. So yes, MATA has a spotlight on them, and rightfully so, and I think that's a good thing.
And for the county's revenue that would be raised by this fee, you want to see specific things like will happen in that corridor on these 8 routes that are within the city of Memphis, are in the what's referred to as the core city.
I'd like to see the county make a significant investment of the order of at least $10 million into MATA, and I think the best place to make that investment is to follow the plan as outlined in Transit Vision. So Transit Vision was an opportunity for various transit advocates and experts to come together to talk about what the needs are with respect to MATA and where investment should flow. In the Transit Vision Plan, which is part of Memphis 3.0, early implementation calls for investment in 8 routes. There are 44 routes in MATA. 8 routes are targeted for the early money. These are the routes that are successful. These are the routes that people are using to get to a job. These are the routes where we could improve frequency and create more job access.
Do you still intend to take this to a vote on the commission in February?
Well, I can't control what happens on the commission. There are many voices that hopefully will come to bear. What I've said is we're going to try to make the case, and we're going to try as best we can to vet and flesh out any other options that come to the table. If we can get more options and more discussion on this, I think we'll be in a good place around February to talk about this. We also have the budget cycle coming right after that, and so there's also another opportunity during the budget cycle to talk about transit.
You mentioned livable wage. You had made an effort to condition, I think it was about $1 million that was going to go to the U of M for a swim center on them, the U of M committing to raising its minimum wage to $15. They didn't make that full commitment. David Rhodes was on the show, the president of U of M, a month ago or something like that, and they're talking about a plan to get there, and they're trying to get there, and they're committed to getting there. But that wasn't enough of a commitment that satisfied you, I think. What are you going to try to condition other money that the county spends and gives to other groups, to nonprofit groups, to any other kind of spending on that $15 minimum wage? Is that going to be a widespread effort, or was it somehow unique to the U of M?
I'm going to do everything I can to move the community forward. So the University of Memphis obviously was a very specific case, and so I never called for them to raise their wages to $15 an hour, although I would love to see it. What I called for them to do was articulate a timeline. So that was a very specific case, and a specific case because we had so many members of the community that were so frustrated by the leadership at the University of Memphis. For the last 8 years, they have been fighting with leadership at the University of Memphis to raise their pay up to $15 an hour. And they couldn't get word as to when this would happen. And so they really were just like, as I said, frustrated that they couldn't get a timeline. And so they wrote to me, so several groups, lots of unions, MICA, just a bunch of groups wrote and said, can you please try as best you can to get the University of Memphis to articulate a timeline for raising their wages to $15 an hour. Since that effort, since the veto and the debate, they have articulated a timeline of 2 years, that they're gonna raise those wages in 2 years. I think that's a good thing. The wages were just raised in September to about $11 an hour. And so that puts the University of Memphis custodial workers, these are the workers we're fighting for, the custodial workers, there are about 300 custodial workers. That puts the custodial workers on par with Walmart workers anywhere in America, right? Well, anywhere in America, you can work for a Walmart and you can make $11 an hour. We wanna see it get up to $15 an hour, and so we are encouraged that now we have word from the University of Memphis for the first time that they'll do this in 2 years.
Are you going to try to put those conditions and use that pressure with other groups?
Eric, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that our community moves forward. So this was, again, a special case because the community reached out to us and asked for us to give voice to their concerns. And so, yes, if we have people in our community that reach out to me and ask me to give voice to their concerns, and I have it within my power to do it, that's what's required of leadership.
Bill.
Let's talk about the elections that have just ended, the city elections. we explored some of the different themes, the calls for change, the calls on specific issues that were present in the city campaigns. What do you think the elections in Memphis said about where we are as a community?
There's a lot of city stuff here. I don't know. I went out. I voted. I'm on the county side, and so I don't know that I actively participated in that election. I supported 3 city council candidates. 2 of the 3 won. I was very gung-ho about the council candidate that was going to represent my neighborhood, David Clemens. He did not win. He was a police officer, and I am a believer, just having served on the Memphis City Council, that the Memphis City Council really needs a lot of diversity. We all know that the real estate and business interests are represented there, but you need some other kinds of perspectives on the Memphis City Council. And I thought David Clemens, who had a career as a police officer, would have been a great person, a great addition to that council to represent the neighborhood where I live. So that was the one of the 3 that we lost. The other 2 candidates that I supported won, and that's kind of where it is. I cared about the city council because I'm an alum of the city council, but I don't know if I participated that heavily in the city elections.
But you've also articulated your own vision of change here. When we talked on our politics podcast a few weeks ago, you told me then that the conversation in Memphis and in Shelby County is changing. We're talking about different issues than we once talked about before, and you're a big part of that. I mean, you're talking about making mass transit here, the bus system, more viable, and you're not talking about it just for a specific reason. You're talking about it as part of your concern about climate change. Mm-hmm. So is there a larger vision of change that is afoot than we saw in the city elections?
I think we are talking about different things in this community. I think that's a good thing. I don't know what the relationship is to the city elections, so I can't make a lot of those kinds of connections. But I do think, yes, I think when I started in elected office in 2011, a lot of the conversation to me seemed to be about tax breaks and stadiums and ribbon cuttings. And those are the kind of things that that didn't motivate me. That's not the reason why I ran for office. I ran for office because I wanted to talk about issues that I heard in the communities from everyday citizens. And so now I do think we're much more focused on those issues. I've talked about what those are. It's livable wages, it's criminal justice reform, it's neighborhoods, it's public safety, it's transit. And I think that's where the conversation is right now, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure the conversation stays there. I want to see more headlines, more people talking about those issues, and less about issues that only affect 100 people or 200 people and don't really move the needle. You
mentioned tax breaks, and let me ask you about tax breaks. The Raymond James is moving from downtown with a pilot tax incentive to move to Ridgeway and Poplar to move out east. Did you support that? I mean, you as county mayor have some authority over EDGE. You appoint 1 or 2 people to that. Yeah, half the people to that board. Did you support that move?
I don't get involved in each one of the tax break instances. Instead, I view my role as to defer to the economic development professionals.
But do you think it was a good idea?
I do not think tax breaks are a good idea. I do not think the economy operates in that fashion. I don't think you can subsidize private business and make that business successful. So I think as a general matter, you shouldn't do tax breaks if you want to stimulate economic activity. As a general matter, you should do tax cuts. So I don't believe that works. But again,
is there a chance of a tax? I mean, I'm sorry to cut you off just because we have a couple minutes left. I mean, is there a chance then of a tax cut at the county level? I mean, that's what the people on the other side will say. Well, we have to have these tax breaks because we get recruited by other communities where the taxes are half or less what they are here, and that this is the way to balance that out.
I would love to see a tax cut on the county level. That is a great way to stimulate real economic activity, right? That's a great way to grow your economy. When we can argue about how much growth you can get from a tax cut, whether versus other things like investment, but there's no doubt about it that is a way to stimulate economic activity.
I mean, back to financial responsibility. Can the county afford a tax cut at this point?
Yeah, we've got plenty of things that could be cut in the county budget.
Like what?
All kinds of things. So, for example, so if you take a look at the last budget, there were significant increases in some categories. I'm proud to say I'm the only elected official, I believe, on the county side that cut expenses from my first year in office to my second year in office. But that kind of perspective that one can cut can apply to all the divisions of county government. In fact, when you talked about MATA, it's just a spitball here. We could do a 2.5% cut across the board and generate $10 million. Right? That's another idea if the will is there. You could do a tax on businesses if the will is there. But the point is, these are tough things to do. So there are plenty of ideas out there, including cuts, including, as you say, reform of the economic development system. There are plenty of ideas out there. The question is, can you get some of those things done? But yes, I am all for tightening our purse strings. I'm all for cuts in order to, create funding for priorities.
What example, as you go into budget season, what examples will you bring forward, do you think?
Well, I'm not for increasing the number of folks that we hire or expanding the number of people on the county payrolls. I think we can make do with what we have. And I think there will always be pressure to expand the payroll on the county side, and I'm not necessarily for that.
All right, thank you. We will leave it there. I'll note that next week we have Bruce McMullen and Mike Rawlings, Police Director, Bruce McMullen, City Chief Legal Officer. We'll be talking about the Civilian Review Board and surveillance, and Carol Coletta the week after that, talking about the riverfront. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Bill. Join us again next week.